Hey everyone, and welcome back to this class, Data Science, Deep Learning in Python Part 1. Now this is where the fun begins. What happens if we want to train a neural network with an arbitrary number of hidden layers? Luckily, we can derive more general rules than what we've discovered so far. In order to help us see what these rules are, let's first try to derive the gradients for a neural network with 3 layers of weights. To recap what we've done previously, we did logistic regression, which is 1 layer, and we looked at a neural network with 2 layers of weights. So a neural network with 3 layers of weights is a natural next step. Since we're running out of letters, we're going to use superscripts to represent our layer values and our weights. So here we have 3 sets of weights, W1, B1, W2, B2, and W3, B3. We call the 2 hidden layer values Z1 and Z2, while the activations are A1, A2, and A3. You can even think of X as Z0 and Y as Z3 if you want, since it might help you follow the patterns more easily. Similarly, when we consider the size of each weight matrix, we can consider the input shape D to be M0, and the output shape K to be M3. So the size of W1 is D by M1, the size of W2 is M1 by M2, and the size of W3 is M2 by K. Or you can think of it more generally as the size of WL is M of L minus 1 by M of L. As usual, the next step is to find the gradient of our objective. Now, because these are composite functions, it makes sense to work backwards, hence the name backpropagation. This is just the same pattern we've been following all along. So first we're going to find the gradients with respect to W3 and B3. Then we're going to find the gradients with respect to W2 and B2, which of course requires more terms due to the chain rule. Finally, we're going to find the gradients with respect to W1 and B1, which will require even more terms. So here's the chain rule, which is the same as what we had before, but expressed in terms of our new variable names. Notice that the indexes also have to have superscripts because we're going to follow the convention that little m2 counts from 1 up to big M2. In other words, we're still using the lowercase letter for the index and the uppercase letter for the total size with corresponding superscripts. Importantly, despite our new notation, this does not change the answer. The 3 derivatives we found still work out to be the same, just with new symbols. So here are the solved gradients, which you should recognize as exactly what we had before. If you don't see why that is, then you should derive them again. As before, the next step is going to be a little more tricky, because it involves more terms in the chain rule. But importantly, we've already derived these. So it's not a matter of deriving them again. It's just a matter of replacing each symbol with our new set of symbols. Also, recall that we've applied the law of total derivatives here, just like before. So we sum over k twice. One thing that's confusing about this is that there are a lot of superscripts and subscripts. So one thing you might want to do is go through each term and do a sanity check to make sure all the superscripts and subscripts make sense. For example, the indices for W2 are M1 and M2. Does this make sense? It does because we previously established that the size of W2 is big M1 by big M2. The next step, of course, is to plug in the expression for each individual derivative. And remember, we've done this already. We're just replacing the old symbols with the new symbols. As a side note, we're again assuming that we're using the sigmoid activation function. The main difference between the 3-layer neural network and the 2-layer neural network is that the last term where we previously saw X, we now see Z1. The final step is to calculate the gradients for the first layer, which will be the largest number of terms in the chain rule that we've seen so far. Luckily, this is nothing more than following the same pattern we've already been following for the past few lectures. So let's start by writing out the chain rule. The most important part of this is that we have to remember the law of total derivatives once again. In particular, not only do we have to sum over k, we also have to sum over m too. Basically, you can think of this as you have to sum over any index that does not appear on the left-hand side. And since d and m1 are what appear on the left-hand side, we have to sum over every other index, which in this case are m2 and k. I've also written out all the functions here so you can easily see how they depend on one another, which tells us why each of these terms appears in the chain rule. So basically, for every function we have one derivative. And since we have 7 functions, we have 7 derivatives. Now, if you don't see how this works right away, which is forgivable since it's quite long and a lot of the symbols look similar, please go through it slowly and make sure that this indeed follows the chain rule. Each of these derivatives is just the derivative of one of these functions from the left-hand side with respect to some variable on the right-hand side. As before, we have conveniently solved most of these derivatives already. For any of the derivatives we haven't solved, they still have the same functional form of derivatives we have solved, so it's just a matter of copying the pattern rather than actually deriving them again. So please double check that what I've written here is correct if you don't see why it works right away. Also, make sure that you know which derivatives each of these terms correspond to. Note that I've replaced the derivative of z2 and z1 with z2 prime and z1 prime in order to save space. But remember that these are just the derivatives of the activation functions. So if we use sigmoid, then it would just be z times 1 minus z, and so on. To summarize what we've done so far, we've gone from solving for the gradient of a 1-layer neural network, which is logistic regression, to a 2-layer neural network, and now a 3-layer neural network. Here in this page, I've summarized the derivatives for each layer of a 3-layer neural network. As a side note, sometimes people disagree on exactly how to count the layers. For example, if you have 2 sets of weights, then you have 3 data layers, meaning x, y, and z for the hidden layer. But for the purpose of this course, when we count a layer, we're counting it as how many linear transformations do we do. In other words, how many weight matrices and bias vectors we have. Since we have 3 sets of weight matrices and bias vectors, we call that a 3-layer neural network. At this point, it's important to consider what patterns we've learned to see so far. The easiest pattern to see is a matter of counting. I just described on the previous slide that we had 7 functions and we also had 7 derivatives. For the weights we looked at before that, we had 5 functions and 5 derivatives. And before that, at the output layer, we had 3 functions and 3 derivatives. So it would appear that every time we go back 1 layer, we add 2 functions and 2 derivatives. That makes sense because at each layer, we add 2 more functions. The first function is a linear transformation on the input to that layer to get the activation, and the second function is the application of the activation function. The next pattern we want to notice is that the further and further we go back, the more common terms we encounter, meaning terms we already calculated previously. That should tell us something. It tells us that this calculation is recursive. In other words, we can use the results of previous calculations without recalculating them. It helps to look only at the weight matrix gradients to help see the pattern. As you can see, the first part of the weight update for W3 appears in the gradient for W2. An even bigger part of the gradient for W2 appears in the gradient for W1. Here's another pattern we notice. If we look at the vectorized forms of the update equations for the 1-layer neural network and the 2-layer neural network, we can see that they look very similar. In fact, if you look a little more closely, it seems we always follow the same pattern. For a general W at layer L, its gradient is the input data matrix into that layer multiplied by some other term. Let's just call it delta for convenience. Now, recognizing that this is the pattern, let's try to reason about what the shape of everything has to be. Starting from the weight matrix WL, this has to be of shape m of L minus 1 by m of L, which we've already established. We also know that z of L minus 1 is of shape n by m of L minus 1. And therefore, we know that this delta term, whatever it may be, must be of shape n by m of L. This is just to satisfy the rules of matrix multiplication. Let's now look back at our equations for the gradients of the three weight matrices to see what this delta variable should actually be. The first delta at the output layer seems a little different from the others, but that's only because the output layer involves a softmax and then the cross-entropy loss function, which the other layers do not. In this case, we can say that delta 3 of nk is equal to tnk minus ynk. The second delta must be everything up to the input to that layer, meaning up to z1. Importantly, notice that z1 does not depend on k, and therefore we can include that summation over k in our expression for delta 2, which should be of size n by m2. The last delta, the delta at the input, or delta 1, can be found similarly by taking everything except the final x term. You notice that we also sum over m2 because x is not indexed by m2, nor is delta 1 indexed by m2. So we're just following the same rule as before, which is to sum over any of the indices that don't show up outside the summation. What's interesting about this is that once you define delta, it's easy to see that each delta can be defined in terms of the deltas that came ahead of it in the neural network. So delta 2 contains the expression for delta 3, and delta 1 contains the expression for delta 2. Using this idea, we can actually express each delta in terms of the delta we found previously. Of course, the only delta we can't do this with is delta 3, since that's at the head of the neural network and is different from all the others. If you think of this in terms of recursion, that would be our base case. So here we can see each delta defined in terms of the delta that came before it. And from here, it's easy to see that every delta, except the very first delta at the head of the neural network, follows a recursive pattern. If we say that we have a big L layer neural network, then we can define delta of big L as t of nk minus y of nk. And then we can define all the subsequent deltas from big L minus 1 down to 1 using the recursive expression you see here. As usual, we can also vectorize this expression for delta. So you might want to double check on paper that all the dimensions make sense. At this point, our weight updates become very simple, as you can see here. Again, since there's no conventional linear algebra notation for the sum over an axis, we use NumPy notation to make things more clear. Although, it's equivalent to multiplying by a vector of length n that just contains all ones. One thing I want to point out in this lecture is that most other resources teach this topic backwards. I discussed this more in my lecture, The Wrong Way to Learn Backpropagation. In particular, what they do is they start with the result, and then sometimes explain how they got there. Or worse, they don't explain it at all, which is very unfortunate, and is actually most often the case. Because what this leads to is people thinking that backpropagation is some kind of magical algorithm that came out of nowhere, but happens to work very well, when that is clearly not the case. And therefore, what we've done is shown that backpropagation is nothing but gradient descent. And not only that, but by recognizing the recursive nature of the gradient equations, we can do some simple substitutions that make finding the gradients very easy. all we needed to do was recognize the common pieces in each gradient and assign that to a new recursively defined variable called delta. Let's summarize what we just did since it was extremely long. This lecture is the culmination of all the knowledge we've gained from the previous lectures in this section. While the derivation and subsequent update equations were initially extremely complicated, you can see that in the end we actually end up with just a set of a few simple rules. At each layer, we first define a delta term, which is a recursive equation in terms of the delta we previously found. Then our weight gradient is just the input to that layer multiplied by the delta term. Once we find the weight gradient, we perform gradient descent as usual. And so now you know why this algorithm is called backpropagation. It's because we worked backwards by finding the delta at each layer in terms of the delta at the layer ahead of it, and then multiply by that layer's input to get the gradient.